Welcome to Watch the Bookerman and to the second week of build to Impact Wrestling Sacrifice 2012, and we're going straight into the show for a change this week, mainly because this week's episode begins with a video package recapping what happened, or the main story coming out of last week's Lockdown Fallout show. Of course, all the focus was on the official contract signing of Brock Lesnar. He became a member of the Impact Wrestling roster last week, but was interrupted as he signed his contract by Kurt Angle. He'd had another contract drawn up, a challenge to face Brock Lesnar at Sacrifice. While the newcomer looked all set to sign that contract, Paul Heyman stepped in, took the contract, and they left. So this week we are going to get the answer to that challenge. Kurt Angle and Paul Heyman were caught up with backstage last week, and Kurt Angle just reiterated his challenge for Sacrifice and questioned why Paul Heyman stepped in before he could sign to make that match official. Paul Heyman is then asked a question to the same effect, and he explains that, like the decision to bring Brock Lesnar to Impact Wrestling, every step of this process is well planned out and thought out much in advance. They're not going to be rushed into any decision by an emotional Kurt Angle or anybody else for that matter. However, he does promise an answer to that challenge on this week's show. The commentators then welcome viewers to the show, just doing whatever they can to promote the hype that's been around the company with Brock Lesnar arriving, with Kurt Angle's challenge to him. But also tonight, we have Beer Money versus the Briscoes in a tables match, a huge match that will see the winner named the number one contender to the Impact World Tag Team Championships at Sacrifice. We get the show off to a really good start with that. Obviously, both guys are doing well as we go then into a in-ring segment. AJ Styles making his way out from the back, and he grabs a steel chair from ringside, entering the six sides and sitting down. With a microphone in his hand, he calls out the American Wolves who attacked him last week. In fact, they might as well bring the rest of their group out with them, because he knows full well that they're too dumb to make any decisions themselves without Austin Aries pulling the strings. The four men then do come out, Aries, Brody Lee and the American Wolves, and they surround AJ Styles. AJ folds up the chair, he's ready to swing it, and invites all of them to enter the ring. However, as they get up on the apron, Chris Hero runs down. He's also grabbed a chair, which he furiously wields. He doesn't make contact with any of the guys, but it's enough of a deterrent that they decide that they do not want anything to do with him. With Claudio Castagnoli, Jimmy Jacobs and Tyler Black all out on the sidelines because of what these four men did, Chris Hero stands as the only remaining New Age original. Aries decides to call off his men despite the numerical advantage, and he's laughing along, heading up the ramp before grabbing a microphone of his own. Pointing to AJ and Hero in the ring, he says that he can just see by the way that they stood right now that these two guys can't stand each other. If it wasn't so pitiful, he'd find it hilarious to see the situation that they found themselves in. But since they want to try and present this united front, despite him knowing that they despise each other, then they should test their friendship next week. AJ Styles and Chris Hero against the American Wolves. AJ looks to Hero, Hero to AJ. A nod between them confirms that they will accept the challenge, and that is a big match set for next week. AJ Styles and the last man standing of the New Age of Honor, Chris Hero. AJ Styles a star of the segment, Brody Lee looking dreadful, and we do lose heat in what is a poor rated segment. I do think that if I'd taken Brody Lee out of this, then it would have been probably mid-70s at least, but Brody Lee is somebody who we're trying to push, and these are the teething issues that we're going to have to deal with as we face them. The promoted match from last week, Hamada defeats Roxy in her first match as the Knockouts champion with a Hamada driver. We don't want the heel Hamada pulling out the moonsault there, so we'll just say the Hamada driver, and she gets a 59, so she's not quite where we want her to be. There's 4 or 5, maybe even more women in the division who are getting better in-ring performances than her. But after the match, as he promised on last week's Evolve Wrestling, Larry Sweeney comes to the top of the ramp, and he says that he understands that a lot of people in the building, viewers at home, wrestlers in the back, in fact, pretty much nobody likes him, but that comes with the job. Nobody can deny that he is good at what he does. However, just look at the stars that he has been able to make. Kazuchika Okada, one of the biggest stars in Japanese wrestling. The Young Bucks, perhaps the fastest rising tag team in the world. And his greatest example of all, the Knockouts champion Hamada. There is another thing that everybody in that list has in common, however, and they all turned their backs on him before he completed his journey. And the fact is, they'd all still be nobodies without him, but they could have been so much more if they'd have stood by Larry Sweeney. You see, Larry teaches these people to step on everybody they can on the way up, but what they don't always get around to learning is that you'll often see those same people on the way back down, and that's the only way that he sees things going as he introduces Hamada to her next challenger. A 6-0-0 record, a championship reign like no other, in that it ended without her ever being defeated, and somebody who his contacts in Japan have told him is very, very angry at Hamada. This legendary monster has a bone to pick with the Knockouts champion, and he introduces Aja Kong. Kong comes to the top of the ramp, stood on the stage with Larry Sweeney. The commentators put over that we have not seen her since the first ever episode of Impact Wrestling, when Hamada sprayed poisoned mist into her eyes. Aja Kong, however, hits a spinning back fist, dropping Larry Sweeney, so no sooner does he think he's got one over on Hamada than he is taken down. Aja Kong then marches down to the ring, a face-to-face with Hamada following, and we are told on commentary that Hamada versus Aja Kong is the Knockouts Championship match for Sacrifice. Now, it might seem like somebody's just coming in without earning a title shot, but again, we point to that 6-0-0 record, her former reign as the Knockouts Tag Team Champion, and the only reason that she doesn't hold the title in Impact Wrestling right now is because of the actions of Hamada, so this is almost a make good as much as anything else. Aja Kong deserves championship gold, and we are going to give her the opportunity to do that at Sacrifice. Her badass gimmick gets only an adequate rating, and I don't think that the storyline or the angles between these two, even the match at the end, is going to be something that is particularly highly rated in the game, but it's something that I wanted to do to bring things full circle with Aja Kong. We wrote her off, and there had to be some kind of comeuppance and some kind of revenge for her against Hamada, and hopefully that's what's going to come at the pay-per-view. But it also serves the purpose of us not really having anybody who A, is built up in time for Sacrifice, and B, that we want to sort of feed to Hamada so early on. So we could have done a rematch with Gail Kim, but we put that stipulation that this was the last match between them in before, so that we didn't have to go back down that route. So it fills a gap for us, to be fair, with what I think is a big Knockouts Championship match planned for Slammiversary. We then go to the back, and with a couple of matches featuring X Division talent scheduled for later in the night, Jim Cornette is interviewed about who he sees as the potential next challengers to Charlie Haas's X Division title. Jim Cornette says that he's heard a few names thrown about, from Kenny Omega to Amazing Red, Homicide, Roderick Strong. Those guys have been putting in good performances on Impact Wrestling, on Evolve Wrestling, but he doesn't see anybody that presents a true threat to the X Division champion. We'll see what Amazing Red is made of later tonight against that crazy lunatic Homicide, and that might give us a bit of a clearer picture about what's next for Charlie Haas, as Jim looks to further put over the X Division champion and lay a few digs in at the former title holder. Adam Pearce walks into the shop. Apologising for the interruption, Adam Pearce takes time to reintroduce himself to Jim Cornette, saying that it's great to see him, it's been a while. Cornette has a smile on his face, shaking hands, and he suggests that they catch up later on, wishing him luck in his match later tonight. Jim Cornette says to JB that Pearce is a good kid, a great pro, putting him over, and they'll be having a catch up later on. Again, losing heat, so things aren't getting the best ratings, but because we've got some high ratings kind of guaranteed from the main event stuff, Brock Lesnar, Kurt Angle, Paul Heyman segments are always going to be right up there in the ratings. I'm not too worried about everything else on the show. Elsewhere in the back, AJ Styles and Chris Hero are seen talking, with Chris Hero admitting that he never thought they'd be in this position. Austin Aries, they don't like him, but there was probably a lot of truth in what he said earlier, and AJ agrees with this, saying that when he agreed to join them for Lethal Lockdown, it was never with the intention to get involved in this never-ending war, but right now, he's got a big group of enemies and not that many allies, so while he probably should have sat back and let these two teams wipe each other off the face of the map, that's no longer an option. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, and while they're both having to deal with this, they've got each other's backs, both tonight and next week against the American Wolves. After that, who knows? Chris Hero agrees, and while the two are quite clearly no closer to becoming friends, they do now have a mutual agreement ahead of their match next week. Hero points out that what happened to his buddies at the hands of these men, there is nothing that is going to stop him from destroying them next week, and then hopefully they can get their hands on Austin Aries and Brody Lee in the meantime. So it's a decent segment between these two. AJ again the star of the segment as we go into the second match of the night, and it's Amazing Red versus Homicide, and Homicide grows increasingly frustrated. Since his return, he's had everything his way. He's been cheating and he's been winning, and this time he is thwarted as the returning D'Angelo Dinero stops him from using that steel pipe that he's stashed somewhere at ringside. In the distraction, Amazing Red is then able to catch Homicide with the Code Red and pin him for the 1, 2, 3. So D'Angelo Dinero, who was written out on Evolve, now appearing on Impact Wrestling to get a little bit of a one-over on Homicide. It's a 9-minute 33 match, and I think these two would have a very good match. Well, we've seen them have matches before that were good matches. There is that distraction at the end, but nonetheless a good X Division match. Amazing Red celebrates in the ring, having been gifted a huge assist against his former friend by D'Angelo Dinero, who he also has a little bit of history with. His cousin Rosita was involved with Dinero, and they've teamed together before, signaling for the X Division Championship around his waist. The commentators put over that Red's recent winning streak must make him the top contender right now. He's won 6 matches in a row. Watching in the back, Charlie Haas is shown in discussion with Jim Cornette at the monitor, while the intense Haas seems focused on the challenge ahead. Cornette has a smile on his face, the pair between them appearing confident that this contender is somebody that they are happy to deal with. But I think again it's a good styles clash between these two. Amazing Red and Charlie Haas at Sacrifice I think will be a really good X Division Championship match. We then get a video package promoting the main event of tonight's show. The commentators introduce a video package looking at the story so far between Beer Money and the Briscoes, having faced off twice previously. Beer Money's victory at Lockdown matched the two teams at 1-1, with the Briscoes having scored a controversial victory over them just a couple of weeks before. Tonight they will face off in the main event, a tables match which will see the winning team earn an Impact Wrestling World Tag Team Championship match against Danielson and Wolf at Sacrifice. Those two clearly still not on the same page, but they'll be having to deal with one of the two best tag teams in the world at the next pay-per-view. Cutting a promo in the back, Rosita addresses the camera, talking about Awesome Kong's attack on her last week. Rosita says that she has been hurt physically by Awesome Kong and many knockouts before her, but that's what you expect when you become a member of the Impact Wrestling roster. What's caused more damage to her is the emotional pain that Awesome Kong has caused. Rosita considered her a peer, a mentor, and most importantly, recently, she considered her a friend. Clearly, she was wrong. Rosita is feeling upset, she's feeling disappointed, but most of all, she is angry. Next week, she is calling Awesome Kong out again, and this time she's going to be prepared for what is coming. Now, pretty much, it's not going to make a difference, is it? Rosita can be as prepared as she wants. It's probably not the best idea for her to be calling out Awesome Kong. We then have a good match with a decent reaction from the crowd, but it's unfortunately cut short as Roderick Strong defeats Alex Shelley by disqualification. The Young Bucks are trying to get involved. Roderick Strong's trying to use his Team USA gold medal, and clearly seeing this in the back and being pretty pissed off with the disrespect, Kurt Angle comes out, grabs the medal from Roderick Strong, throws it to the outside and hits an angle slam to him. So the Motor City Machine Gun's probably not too happy with Kurt Angle getting involved, but the intensity on the face of Kurt Angle and the personal disrespect that he probably takes this as, they're not going to have too much issue with him. Alex Shelley with a 74, Roderick Strong with a 74, they have great chemistry and it's a good 79 rated match, so probably one we should run back in the future. Having entered the match, stopping Roderick Strong from using the gold medal to his advantage, Kurt Angle stands over Strong with a furious expression on his face. We've sort of run these two things separately, but Kurt's obviously seen enough of this now. Staring down the Young Bucks, he tells them to come and collect their buddy. Tentatively getting up on the apron, the Young Bucks clearly don't want to be anywhere near Kurt Angle, but he leaves them little choice. He grabs Nick Jackson, pulling him into the ring. Matt follows but quickly regrets his decision, and Angle tosses the Young Bucks across the ring, hitting them with a series of German suplexes, angle slams, whatever it is, before they roll back to the outside. Angle then picks Strong up, tossing him to the outside. That so-called Team USA reunited, and Kurt is in no mood for games. He is absolutely furious as he demands a microphone from ringside. He says that he's going to deal with Roderick Strong and he can bring the Young Bucks if he wants next week. However, he's here to send a message to Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman. He's going to get an answer to his sacrifice challenge later tonight. He's been promised that, but he warns there is only one outcome that he's going to accept, and if he doesn't get the answer that he wants, then things aren't going to be pretty. So another really good segment, gaining heat to our main event storyline, but also Kurt setting up a match for next week, which will allow him to make his first appearance on Impact Wrestling, or in an Impact Wrestling ring as a wrestler, for well over 6 months now. We then return to the second hour of the show, Samoa Joe making his way out, and he is in a bad mood. Samoa Joe says that no matter what he does and where he goes, it seems like he's being overshadowed and overlooked. First, it was Paul Heyman casting a shadow over his match with Kurt Angle at Lockdown, then the arrival of Brock Lesnar, and now everybody is asking him about something that management have told him that nobody is allowed to talk about. Samoa Joe isn't going to address those rumours, but not because he's been asked to, but because he isn't here to talk about anybody but himself. Now, the idea here, sort of in the subtext of this segment, is that between lockdown and last week, CM Punk, we're going to do like a fake report that he has walked out on the company, and it's kind of, we're trying to do the idea of where does the storyline and reality merge kind of thing. Obviously on screen it's not played in that way at all, but the idea here is that with Samoa Joe saying that he's been asked not to talk about this, that there's something going on with CM Punk that isn't being spoken about, and eventually that will turn back into a storyline thing, but we're teasing here that CM Punk has walked out on the company. Samoa Joe feels that he's become invisible to these fans, invisible to the boys in the back, and invisible to Impact Wrestling management, and he feels that he has got no choice but to show them exactly what he's capable of. Coming out from the back, Jay Lethal is joined by Maria, and he comes down to the ring and enters to speak with Samoa Joe. Joe looks annoyed to be interrupted, but Maria gets in front of Jay and suggests Joe hears him out. Jay says that he sees exactly what Joe does. Samoa Joe has been playing second fiddle to another man for too long, and if that man isn't here right now, he doesn't see him, then clearly he didn't give as much of a damn about Joe that he claimed to. Lethal tells Joe that he should never be secondary to anybody, he should be equal. Jay offers Joe his hand, suggesting that his former mentor joins him in a tag team. Samoa Joe looks at the hand, looks at Jay and Maria, but leaves the ring. He is going to think about it, so there is no confirmation there, but Jay Lethal looking to form a tag team with somebody he has a lot of history with, and despite Jay Lethal struggling when improvising, Samoa Joe does a masterful job of his interactions with the crowd. Tara then defeats Taylor Wilde, illegally using the ropes for leverage. I suppose it won't work with a Widow's Peak, so whatever she does, possibly a roll up on Taylor Wilde. 6 minutes and 29. It's a good match, two good performances from the two of them, and we do the job of giving the crowd a breather. During the match, it is confirmed that at Sacrifice there will be a Knockouts Battle Royal. The winner of that Battle Royal will get to choose her partner to face Alyssa Flash and Sarah Del Rey at Slammiversary, so a huge match with huge stakes for the knockouts planned for Sacrifice. And Tara, well, with what she's been doing in recent weeks, we might have an idea of who she'd look to choose as her partner, and of course Taylor Wilde and Sarita, a well-established team in our division. Tara takes a microphone following her victory. She is so happy with her win, but also that upcoming Battle Royal at Sacrifice has taken her excitement to another level. Tara says that it's amazing that both she and Mickie James will be in that match, because that gives them two chances to earn a shot at the Impact Knockouts Tag Team Championships. So again, continuing this somewhat delusional character from Tara, if Mickie wins, there is absolutely no chance that she'll be picking her as her partner. But we then get an interview with the Knockouts Tag Team Champions, and they're laughing at what they've just seen from Tara, saying that they never thought they'd see a more dysfunctional team than the World Tag Team Champions Bryan Danielson and Desmond Wolfe, but facing Mickie James and Tara at Slammiversary, that would take things to a whole other level. Mickie James then storms into the set, unimpressed with the Knockouts Tag Team Champions making light of her situation. She says that she is looking for a championship match at Slammiversary, but believe her, Tara is the last person she's going to pick if she wins that Battle Royal at Sacrifice. We then get a segment with the cameras catching up with Roderick Strong and the Young Bucks, looking a little dishevelled, worse for wear, and of course furious at the actions of Kurt Angle. Roderick Strong says that when he came into this company just over 2 years ago, he was taken under the wing of Kurt Angle, and he thought that Kurt Angle would be proud to share a ring with another set of gold medalists. Nick Jackson adds that while Kurt Angle won his Olympic gold medal in 1975 or whenever it was, they won theirs in 2011. That makes them the true gold medalists of this company. Matt adds, didn't Kurt win his medal in amateur wrestling anyway? This is professional wrestling. We are the real deal. Now, Roderick himself doesn't seem that impressed with the uneducated comments of his two partners because he wants to get serious, saying that next week isn't about gold medals. He rips his from around his neck, throws it to the ground. He considered Kurt to be a mentor for a long time, but next time the student defeats the master. So Roderick Strong isn't playing around. He's not getting involved in these stupid comments of the Young Bucks. He's just sending a straightforward message to his opponent next week, and that's just so that it doesn't seem like a straightforward squash, essentially. If we're playing Roderick Strong as a bit of a goofy comedy character, then there's no interest in him facing Kurt Angle, I don't think. But we're also reminding people that in the first 2 years of his run here, before he joined this group, he was very much a serious competitor who Kurt Angle and a lot of people respected, and he's going to prove that next week against the Olympic gold medalist. Adam Pearce then defeats Randy Myers in 1 minute and 10 with a pile driver. Of course, it was going to be a terrible match. The lucky thing is that we limited it to 1 minute, and it's just putting over that Adam Pearce has now fully joined the Impact Wrestling roster, having pretty much been expelled from Evolve Wrestling. Jim Cornette comes out to join commentary for the match, but before he even gets the chance to put his headset on and sit down, Adam Pearce has picked up a dominant victory. We again cool the crowd, but I'm not too worried about that. Adam Pearce stands tall in the ring. Jim Cornette stands basically laughing at the situation, the fact that he didn't even get to sit down for this match, and he applauds Adam Pearce. They'll be catching up later, as we said. We then get Rosita approached by her cousin. I don't know if we ever established that they were cousins in this timeline, but whatever. They used to be in LAX together. She's approached by Sarita, who tells her that calling out Awesome Kong is a really bad idea. Rosita says she knows that that's exactly what everybody is saying. She's not stupid. She knows that people are going to look at her and look at Kong and think that it's a really bad idea, but this isn't a choice for Rosita. She has to call Awesome Kong out. Rosita says that she can't let her do that, which is why she's challenged Awesome Kong to a match next week. Sarita is going to do her best to deal with Awesome Kong and hopefully catch the eye of management for a potential Knockouts Championship match. And she suggests that Rosita stays as far away from Kong as possible, warning her she shared the ring with her before. She knows how dangerous she can be. Well, Rosita clearly isn't happy with this, and it feels almost like she's being patronised. There's little she can do because that match is now booked for next week, so that is happening. Rosita, whether she wants to come out after the match or whatever it is, she's kind of been scuppered in her plan, but Sarita valiantly standing in there for her and at least trying to take some of the heat or potential damage away from Rosita. We then get a promo from D'Angelo De Niro, who talks about his return earlier tonight when he stopped Homicide from cheating against Amazing Red. He says that it's a shame he's not been around for the last few weeks while Homicide's been doing the same on Evolve Wrestling. The Pope says that it looks like Amazing Red is heading straight for a shot at the X Division Championship, but De Niro has a title of his own. Homicide hasn't earned that title shot just yet, but that's not going to stop the Pope from calling him out on Evolve Wrestling and kicking his ass. We then go into the main event, a tables match, which unfortunately it's a good rating, it's good wrestling, a decent reaction from the crowd. Robert Roode doing really well, Jay Briscoe and James Storm also. Unfortunately Mark off his game, but the chemistry getting the crowd buzzing, so we can't complain with that as a main event, other than the fact that it goes to a draw and it's some kind of situation where it's unclear. Members of both teams go through a table, but it's unclear who it is who goes through first, and it's unclear who's done the move, so the referee has no choice but to call it off to a draw. We'll say that Mark and James Storm were already out on the outside, and then Robert Roode and Jay Briscoe go through it, so everybody is down following the match. Confusion, of course. The commentators not sure what this means for the Impact World Tag Team Championships match. And a note that I forgot to say, but they were in there. Desmond Wolfe was on commentary and Bryan Danielson was at ringside. So on one side of the announce table, we've got Desmond Wolfe with a headset on. On the other side, we've got Bryan Danielson. He's just watching, laser focused on the ring. Every time we cut to him, he's got nothing to say. But we get after the match that they're even managing to disagree about what should happen next day. The two men getting in each other's faces, arguing loudly across the commentary table as the commentators themselves try and do their jobs of working out what this means for the number one contendership. Wolf may be suggesting that they get another match between each other and see who comes out on top. Bryan saying they've both not won, so neither of them should get a shot. The commentators want to put over how these two teams have pushed each other to the limit in recent weeks, and they've both more than proved themselves worthy of a shot at the World Tag Team Championship. So if it's Beer Money who gets a shot, if it's the Briscoes who get the shot, You couldn't really complain either way, but we go into the break there with Bryan Danielson and Desmond Wolfe still pissed off with each other. We then return to a really good segment to end the show. Everything's been cleared up as Kurt Angle comes down to the ring and he is looking for the answer to his challenge. But first he wants to talk about his history with Brock Lesnar. So we go over what they did in WWE, the fact that they've wrestled in Japan, that they've even fought each other behind the curtain before. For months he's heard the rumours, of course, and at lockdown he was ready to be confronted from a ghost from his past. But when Brock Lesnar arrived, he looked right through him. Angle understands why Brock may have his sights set on the Impact World Championship. Everybody here does. Kurt Angle wants to become the Impact World Champion again. But like AJ Styles said last week, title shots aren't handed out in Impact Wrestling. They are earned. At Sacrifice, he is giving Brock Lesnar the challenge to prove himself as a top contender, just like he's proved himself everywhere he's been. So he's not in any way trying to disparage Brock Lesnar. He's just saying you're coming back to the business after 5 or 6 years. He isn't just going to walk in and get a title shot. This is his chance to prove himself inside the 6 sides, and Kurt Angle wants an answer. Perhaps disappointing fans. Just Paul Heyman comes out and he's smirking. He's happy with the sense of disappointment that this creates. Of course, everybody's going to be happy to see Brock Lesnar, but we have positioned him as a heel, so hopefully this gets some heat, at least on the side of Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman tells Kurt that he doesn't know if he realises, but who gets or doesn't get a title shot has nothing to do with him anymore. And furthermore, Kurt doesn't have any idea about the conversations that have gone on behind the scenes between Paul, Brock and Dixie Carter. So before he starts trying to lay down the law, Kurt Angle needs to remember his place. Paul Heyman does say, however, that he accepts the challenge for Sacrifice because this is the perfect match for the biggest pay-per-view draw on the planet today. We'll see Kurt Angle wrestle on TV next week, but there's no chance that you're going to see Brock on Impact Wrestling. You're going to have to buy this pay-per-view to see his first match in the company. We're also going to say that Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman will speak next week. They're going to go in depth, a full explanation. They were rudely interrupted by Kurt Angle last week before they could say anything after Brock Lesnar signed. So next week is their opportunity to go in depth, explain why Brock Lesnar is here, and basically coming out of this segment, Kurt Angle pissed off that Brock Lesnar's not here, but happy that he is going to get his hands on him at Sacrifice, and hopefully if there's a chance where both men are in the building before that pay-per-view, we see some further interaction between them. But I think you can almost sell this pay-per-view just on that. It doesn't really matter what else is on that show. Kurt Angle versus Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar's first match in America in, 8 or 9 years? So, yeah, a massive show. Only getting an 83 rating, but the main event storyline is absolutely carrying this show. Of course, Joe's segment was really good, but the main high points on this show were Kurt Angle, Brock Lesnar, Paul Heyman related. We're now going to go into Evolve Wrestling for this week, which begins with a video package showing us what happened on Impact Wrestling. Homicide was stopped from cheating by D'Angelo Dinero, and all those guys are scheduled to appear on tonight's show. We begin with a victory for Kenny King over Jack Evans, a high spots rated match. Did really well, to be fair, and I've just noticed that we've hinted at a turn for Kenny King there. I actually want to go ahead and pull the trigger with that, so I'm going to put that into the post-match segment so we can actually have him as a face now, because it's kind of been how I've been using him. So Kenny King is now a face, as we use this segment for him to call out Homicide, who attacked him on the previous week's show. He knows that the Pope wants to talk to him, but he's out here first and he wants Homicide. Homicide comes out, he's belittling Kenny King, calling him a nobody. He was just collateral damage. Pope comes out and he wants to fight Homicide, but tells him that he doesn't deserve a title shot. He can see the fire in Kenny King, so he's got an idea. King v Homicide next week, and he's willing to give whoever wins that match a shot at the Evolve Wrestling Championship the week after. Homicide accepts the challenge. Obviously, he's happy to face Kenny King, but warns him and anybody else who's between him and the Evolve Championship that things aren't going to end well for them. Kenny King is then interviewed in the back by Ada Okal, and he says that he is looking to move on from Team Canada. He's beat both of them, he's dealt with whatever's going on with them, and he wants an Evolve Wrestling Championship match. So maybe a little bit of a silly thing to say just after Homicide warned everybody. Sarita then defeats Daisy Hayes in 5 minutes and 51 with a double underhook powerbomb. Sarita has a gimmick that's getting stale, but does put in a decent performance. She doesn't really have a gimmick, does she, to be fair? Maybe in this thing with Awesome Kong now we can change a gimmick and hopefully get her a bit more momentum. She of course is in the Knockouts Tag Team Battle Royal at Sacrifice, But next week, she's got Awesome Kong on Impact Wrestling. We then get a good interview from Colt Cabana and El Generico. And El Generico looks a little bit bare without that X Division Championship over his shoulder. And we can see from his demeanour that he's still not quite over that defeat. We haven't seen him on Impact Wrestling since losing. But him and Colt Cabana return to the ring tonight. And Colt's trying to raise the mood. He's trying to lift the spirits of El Generico, but it's not quite working. That's the dynamic between them before tonight's main event. Colt Cabana is sure that getting back to winning ways is just the tonic that El Generico needs. Larry Sweeney comes out, and it's the first time he appeared in a while without a black eye was on Impact Wrestling. Well, after the spinning back fist from Aja Kong, he's got another one. He introduces, alongside the Beautiful People, Rhett Titus. He's got previous connections with the Beautiful People, and now it looks like he is trying to make a star out of their cameraman, Rhett Titus. Kenny Omega defeats Rhett Titus, 4 minutes and 59, an absolutely shit match to be fair. Cool in the crowd. Kenny's okay. Even Rhett wasn't too bad, but he gets a 27. Whatever, we move on. After the match, Angelina Love, impressed with Kenny Omega, she begins flirting with him a little bit, but he's led away by Velvet Sky and Larry Sweeney as Homicide comes out and lays out Kenny Omega in the middle of the ring. Of course, we warned him about what he said earlier, to be fair. Homicide was always going to come for him after that, and it looks like, as well as Kenny King, Kenny Omega is in the sights of Homicide, or rather, he wants to get him out of the way as he continues on his journey towards an Evolve Wrestling Championship match. We then introduce Blackout, Ruckus and Sabian, explain why they're here in Evolve Wrestling. They've been given the opportunity to prove themselves in the main event, and they're hoping to do just that. They're going to defeat Colt Cabana and El Generico and make sure that the smile doesn't return to the former X Division champion's face. Gangster gimmicks for both of them, adequate and poor. One of them improvising well in another bad segment, to be fair. And we go then into the main event, which isn't great. Didn't expect it to be, but Colt Cabana and El Generico back to winning ways. Generico does carry the performance with a 65, but it is Colt Cabana who gets the pin, pinning Sabian following a Colt 45. They celebrate in the ring. Colt Cabana's really happy. It's not often he gets a pinfall victory, so that's probably part of it. But he's also trying to, again, lift the spirits of El Generico, who he's happy, his arm raised, he's impressed with Colt Cabana's performance, but there's still something missing for him. Of course, it's the X Division Championship, and that's why he's in a bit of a bad mood. Jazz is retiring. I wasn't given the option, I don't think, there to talk her out of it. You normally get a decision, don't you? I will check. No decisions pending, so maybe I've talked her out of it before. Homicide's now toned, that's good to see. Kenny King getting praise from Sting, so a lot of opinions here tonight. Tara is too small. Chris Hero has some odd opinions. Sting at least being a positive influence in the back. The ratings continue to be good, but yeah, that's just the sort of backstage fluff that we get. I'm not really taking too much notice of any of it as we continue the build to Sacrifice 2012, and next week Kurt Angle will have his first match on Impact Wrestling, well, his first ever match on Impact Wrestling, the TV show, but back when we were TNA, it was August the last time that he had, wow, Kurt Angle and Roderick Strong. So Kurt's last, I probably should have mentioned that, Kurt's last match on TV was teaming with Roderick Strong. We'll have to mention that next week against Matt Morgan and Mr. Anderson. So the company has changed a hell of a lot in the 9 months or so that it is since he last appeared, but he'll be back in the ring and we'll hear from Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman too. So hopefully a lot to look forward to on next week's show. Thank you for joining me on this one. Thank you for still following the series if you are, and I will see you next time. Cheers.